Welcome to the Success Ascent. My name is Pat Mancuso, the creator and host of our show, and I am excited today to welcome a very special guest by the name of Kahn. Now, I'm going to tell you about Merritt, and then we're going to hear from her in just a second. But as you know, ladies and gentlemen, the Success Ascent is about interviewing entrepreneurs, business owners, authors, thought leaders, and talking to them about their journey of success and how they're impacting the world. And so I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about today. So let me introduce you to Merritt. So Merritt has coached and trained entrepreneurs and sales teams for more than 20 years. And she's always surprised when people are always surprised when she tells them the secret to stop selling and start getting selected. And I know we're going to talk about what that's about and maybe even find out some magic words a little bit later on how to do that. She says nobody wants to be sold, but people want to be selected, and they want to be selected the right solutions to their challenges. She teaches the Open Business for Frame Network so entrepreneurs, business owners, and professionals can expand their influence, impact, and income without feeling pushy and aggressive, because no one likes anybody who's pushy or aggressive. She's also an author of Myth Shift, Challenging the Truths That Sabotage Success. So, Merritt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Pat. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm excited that you're here, and I know today we're going to add some high value content. So before we get started, though, I always ask my guests, we always like to have a little bit of fun. Tell us something that somebody either doesn't know about you, maybe you don't share it a lot, or would surprise people listening.
I think people would be surprised to know that I do stand-up comedy for a hobby, because that's no pressure. I actually wrote, produced, and performed a one-woman inspiring comedy show for my 50th birthday. That's where you go, ooh, what do you mean you can't possibly be 50?
I love it.
Yeah.
So that's so what's the funniest thing that's happened to you on stage? Anything that you recall?
Funniest thing on stage. When I was in high school, I had the first line in the first scene of the big musical Grease, and my job was to put my tray down on a table, and then that was the trigger, and we would all burst into song. And what actually happened was I put my tray down on the table, and I went to sit down. My chair fell out from under me, broke into a million pieces, and I am literally on my butt in front of a standing room audience, in front of everyone I know at the most judgmental time of my young life. And it wasn't funny at the time, but now I look back and I realize that in that moment, I relied on my quick wit. I came up with something to say. It worked in the show. And the director asked me if I could do the same thing again the next night, to which I told her, not on your life.
I love it. I love it. Well, good for you. Good for you. So in the Success Ascent, we talk about entrepreneurs' journey, and I always like to, kind of pull things from folks on that journey. So let me ask you the first question in that. And where did you first get the entrepreneurial bug?
I've always been in sales. It was really, growing up, it was never really a question of what was Merritt going to do with her life. It was more a question of what is Merritt going to sell? My dad was in advertising. My mom was in real estate. My grandfather had a used car lot. My grandmother sold Avon. So it was sales all the time. And I had been in radio advertising sales, but I started looking around, and all of the women at that time that were in management and leadership roles, not a single one of them had a family. And I got a little nervous because I wanted more for my life than just to be a great radio sales exec. So I really looked around at what were different opportunities and who were the entrepreneurs that I admired and what was the kind of lifestyle I wanted for myself. Okay. And that was really what opened my mind. It was really just looking around and seeing what I wanted.
So nobody early on in your journey, like parents or neighbor or, school sales event, anything there that you can go back to?
I suppose that I was always around people who were in business for themselves. My mom had her own real estate business, and so she was very entrepreneurial. Sure. But I looked at it like, if you could develop business, you can do anything, as opposed to looking at more through the lens of, I want to be a professional or an expert in this professional services arena, and then I'd have to figure out how to grow my business. So I always looked at entrepreneurship like, first, what would I do to grow a business, and
Right.
because I had, gosh, now that you're bringing this up, I mean, I sold Girl Scout cookies, I sold greeting cards door to door. Like, I was always in business for myself from the time I was 7.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, see that there's always the reason I probe there a little bit is I always find that there is something back early, that in an experience that's kind of common in entrepreneurs that gets them started. So I always like to to go back there a little bit. So let's talk about that entrepreneurial journey. What ceilings have you experienced as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, that really have impacted you?
It's interesting. I've heard some of your previous episodes, so I kind of knew that question might be coming my way. Um, I don't know that I ever really related to anything like a ceiling. My upbringing was always more about, you create the opportunities for yourself. And I know my dad always told me that, well, I can remember, anytime I told my dad something wasn't possible, he would always say the same thing to me. Whether I was going for a spot on the cheerleading team, and I told him, there's no way I would make, captain of the cheerleading team. Like, I haven't been cheerleader that long. And
Mhm.
he would say, well, who chiseled that over the door? And then I remember going to him saying, I'm too young to be a sales manager. I need more experience as a salesperson. And he'd say, well, who chiseled that over the door? And then when I went back to him years later and just said, I don't know, maybe I'm not really sure I have what it takes to own my own business and run
Right.
things on my own. And he said, who chiseled that over the door?
I
And
love
what
it.
happened was, every single time he asked me that question throughout my life, he challenged my thinking,
Right.
and he made me look for other opportunities. And he made me look at it and go, well, actually, maybe it is possible.
Yeah.
I think who chiseled that over the door was sort of my dad's version of who carved that in stone, but I don't
I
know. He
like
didn't own
it.
any
I like
chisels.
it. I'm gonna borrow it. And
Yeah.
I love that. Who chiseled that over the door? I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just something I grew up with. I never really had a chance to relate to anything like it was a ceiling,
Okay.
because anytime I had an inkling of thought like that, I
Okay.
would hear my dad's voice in my head and just say, well, of course it's possible. I just haven't
Sure.
figured out the way yet.
So what's been your biggest challenge as an entrepreneur?
I think my biggest challenge was getting over the hurdle of thinking I had to do it all by myself
Yeah.
to be, like, officially the
Right.
business owner. And I wish I could tell you that I learned that early in my entrepreneurial career, but it took me more than a decade to really understand the power of team and collaboration,
Right.
and letting other people work in their genius zones, because you can't be a genius in everything. And
Right.
I'm a very good visionary, big picture thinker. It takes a lot of effort for me to put a process in place, and I can think strategically and systematically, but it's not my go-to way of being. So
Right.
when I surround myself with people who are thought leaders in those areas, and we work together on an idea, it happens faster, it's a lot easier, and honestly, it's been way more effective
Yep.
when I loosen up the reins. I don't take everything from even the Lone Ranger had Tonto, right? Like,
Sure.
Batman has Robin.
Yep.
So
Yep. Yep.
once I understood that, I was able to get a lot farther in my own business, and I was able to help my clients a lot better, and life was better.
So here's what's interesting. So first of all, almost every entrepreneur I've interviewed, and certainly I've experienced this myself, is what you talked about, that ceiling. That's a ceiling, right? We have to come to the
That's
realization
true.
we can't do it, and it's very common amongst entrepreneurs. So I want to ask you one other question around that. Then I'm going to jump to one other thing. Was there a defining moment? Was there an experience? Was there a setback that created that aha moment to go, I can't do it all on my own?
Hmm. I think I've had a few of those moments, because if I'm honest, I think there have been some patterns that I've noticed over the course of my career where I'll get to a certain point on my own and I get frustrated or I start working too hard. And then I
Right.
realize, okay, I'm way out of balance.
Yeah.
I'm not having fun. The thing I enjoy doing, the way I like to serve people isn't, yeah, I'm not able to get past this certain barrier. Maybe it's income level or just the way that I'm just working too hard and I'm exhausted. And then I go and I look for the people to help. And
Sure.
then, you get to that next plateau where you've gotten that help to that point and then you've grown or
Yep.
things like that. And then you have to realize you have to kind of step back again because it gets out of balance. So I think I have uh, a pretty lengthy track record of getting to that next hurdle and then realizing, okay, it's time again um, to expand the box.
Yeah.
I think about it like if you draw a box and you put all the dots in the box and the dots are all the things that you know how to handle, and then as you learn to handle more, there's just more that's filling up the box, and at some point you don't realize that there's dots in a box. It's just a fully filled in box, and that's
Sure.
when you have to add another ring around it
Yeah.
and get that, expand either your capacity or get more team around you so now you can handle more things and you start filling in more dots, and so
Absolutely.
you're growing and expanding.
Yeah. So those are ceilings. I love it, Merritt. We found your ceiling.
You found my
I
ceilings,
love it.
Pat.
I love it.
I
I love it.
Yes.
So let me ask you one other question and then we're going to shift gears. So if you had to do this all over again and you were talking with the 20-year-old version of yourself, what would you say to the 20-year-old version? Like, what would you tell them to do differently or to do, either or?
Well, the best thing I did early in my 20s was quit my job, put everything in storage, and backpack around the world for a full year on my own. So I would definitely tell my 20-year-old self, like, go do that again. That was
Okay.
definitely the best decision you ever made.
I love it.
Um, and I think I would encourage 20-year-old me to be more open to going out and seeking the advice from the people who are doing the thing you really want.
Sure. Sure.
Um, yeah, I think just offering yourself to really learn to not think you know it all. Not that I was a know it all. I think I've always been a very open minded person, but I think I would have encouraged younger me to maybe take a few more risks um, and have a little bit more fun. I think
Yeah.
I was very driven early in my years, and it was all about the work. And I feel like I might have told
Yeah.
myself to have a little bit more
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Boy, that's pretty common too. That's so common. So let's shift gears. So you're doing great work right now and in around emotional intelligence and success models and in helping teams and people with the right success mindset. And so let's just open up the conversation. You have this pillow in your background. And so tell me about the concept, the pillow, and how that's helping people.
Well, I am often invited to speak at a conference or a sales kickoff, large events as an opening keynote. And one of the things that I recognized early on in my work with sales teams and business owners and entrepreneurs is that nothing really happens until somebody is open to receiving your value. So sales is a great example where, if you make a fist with your left hand and you wave a $20 bill with your right hand, the fist really represents the mind of your prospect, and the dollar bill represents the value that you have to give.
Mm,
And no matter how hard you try, you cannot jam your paper bills into a closed fist. It just doesn't
right.
happen. And so I use that as a metaphor for how we're out there in the world trying to cram our value, our expertise, our solutions into closed minds, and it doesn't work. So the first step toward a closed deal is really an open mind. And the key that how do you open someone's mind? Crowbar, jaws of life. I mean, probably not good ideas, right? But I think it's as simple as 4 magic words.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you, "Are you interested in my sales training solutions?" That's very easy to say no to. But if I say, "Are you open to talking through some ideas about how you might improve your sales results?" It's a little harder to say no to that,
Right.
because if you say you're not open to it, it actually impacts your identity.
Hmm.
It's not about, you can be interested or uninterested in something, and that's no reflection on who you are as a person. But if you admit to being not open to something,
Right.
you're actually saying, "Yeah, I'm pretty closed-minded." And nobody says that.
No, no.
So I found that that's a great question to really open people's minds to new possibilities. And often the very first question I ask an audience is, have you already decided it can't get any better? Or are you open to a new possibility? And we get their minds spinning. And then throughout the rest of the event, they're open to new ideas, whether it's hallway conversations with their peers or other
Right.
presenters, but it just changes the game.
So, what do you think causes that closed mindedness?
I think people have experiences. We've all had rejection and experiences that have kind of knocked us off kilter a little bit.
Right.
Um, we've tried something and it didn't work, and so we're gun shy about trying something new again. I think all those kinds of things contribute to closing our minds. It's a great question, because if you think about a child, right? I mean, what a great example. Like, a child is always open. Like,
Yeah,
what
completely.
can we do? What can we do? How can we play? Like,
Right.
they're always exploring and learning and growing. And then we've been told no so many times, especially as a salesperson, as an entrepreneur, as anybody in business these days. You've been rejected and told what can't work. And so
Right.
we stop looking for those new possibilities. And so if you can just open your mind to even being willing to look for new
Hmm.
possibilities, that's the first step.
So, arrogance, ego come into that at all?
Of
Closed
course.
mindedness?
Of course. Yeah. If you think you know it all, in fact, that's why we call our business Select Sales. So we spell it SELLect. We want people to stop selling. We want you to be selected. And you can't be selected by your ideal clients if you're trying to convince them and push them into the ideas and the solutions that you want to sell to them.
Right.
People don't want to feel pushed into anything. They're more than happy to make a buying decision,
Right.
but the best way to use our expertise is to ask good questions so that
Mhm.
people can discover for themselves that you have a solution that would be valuable for them, and that they can freely select to work with you. So it's a whole different way of looking at the world of sales. And when I use the word sales, I know a lot of people wouldn't necessarily call themselves salespeople, but in business, if you want to be influential with other people, we have to really understand the things that have influence over us.
Yeah.
And that's, a very important piece of the puzzle.
You know what I find so funny, and we'll get off business here for a second, but I love when people go, well, I just don't like sales, and I really don't like people who sell. And I go, well, let me think. I had to sell myself on my value to my wife. I had priests and people who lead churches have to sell the value of what they're selling to collect money to have him. I mean, like kids are selling, for crying out loud. Sit at my table. Sit at my table at the school. I mean, I just think that that's crazy. I just really do. I think that's a limiting belief on people's part because they were harmed somewhere where there was a better salesman than them. I don't know. Um, let me. I want to. I want to keep going on this on the other side. There's also arrogance and ego on the part of the person who you're attempting to open up, right?
Of course. Yeah, that's a great observation. I mean, there's always going to be those people that think they know everything,
Right.
that think their idea is the best idea or the only idea that's going to work.
Okay.
And, sometimes you have to decide whether or not that is an opportunity that you select to do business with them,
Ah,
right? I think it's a good business relationship is very much a two-way
Sure.
communication, and it has to work for both parties. Otherwise, it's really not a good relationship.
Right.
So, we try to weed out the know-it-alls. As a coach and consultant, like I can't even, it's frustrating,
Yeah.
if you can't get through to somebody. And that's again why it's so important to first establish that they're going to be open to having a conversation, open to hearing something new,
Right.
open to a new spin on an old idea.
Yeah.
If they're not, then game over. Like, don't waste my time.
So then that leads to my next question. So when do you cut bait? Like, at
As
what
early
point
as
do you
possible.
go? At what point do you go? You know what? I've done everything that I could possibly imagine, and they're just not. I mean, there's no way I'm getting that even the pry bar in there. So like, where's that benchmark to do that?
Yeah, I think as early as possible is when you would pull the trigger. Once you know that somebody doesn't really qualify to work with you, they don't qualify as an ideal client or prospect, um, you know, be polite about it, but just say, based on what you're sharing with me, I'm not sure that we're the best fit for this project or at this time or whatever it is.
Right.
Um, if you're open to it, I'd be happy to make some other recommendations for you. But I just, for a number of reasons, I just don't think that we're going to be a good match.
Yes.
And sometimes they'll ask me, well, what do you mean? And if I feel like sometimes I will just say,
Yeah.
well, if you're open to it, I'm happy to share with you why I think that, but I'm curious, why do you think I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
having
Yeah.
that
Yeah. It's the
idea, right?
takeaway,
So
right? It's like, what?
yeah.
Wait a minute. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. Well, but I'm not doing it like a tactic to get
No, no,
them.
no, no. I know, but that's how they like they're like their response to it is like, well, I wasn't expecting that, right?
Right. And it just happens. Look, we're not a perfect match for everybody romantically. We're not a perfect match for everybody in business.
Sure.
So let's stop trying to be something to fit everybody's box, and let's be very selective on who we really do best serve, so that we can continue to do our best work. That's where we're going to feel like we're really contributing our maximum value. That gives us the most satisfaction in our career,
Mhm.
and that's when it doesn't feel like work. But
Sure.
when you push and you try to sell and you talk somebody into working with you on something, it feels like the whole thing is going to be effort. And
Yeah.
I've just never been that desperate for business.
Sure. So then let me ask you one other question before we shift gears again. So I have this conversation. I ask you, are you open to, and you say yes. What's the follow-up question or two that you feel like is really impactful at that moment then to ask?
Okay, so once I've established that, when I say, have you already decided it can't get any better, or are you open to a new possibility? And they say, well, yeah, I'm open to a new possibility. That's kind of why we're talking. That's why I'm here. Great. Tell me a little bit about the situation that you're in. Tell me a little bit more about the specifics of the challenge. I want to get a better sense of where we're starting from. And let me ask, and we'll ask and answer each other's questions, and at the end, let's determine together if it makes sense for us to talk about how I would work with you to solve these challenges, or we can decide together if we're really not a good match. So I set the context, the frame
Okay.
for how the conversation is going to go and how it's going to end, but I always start with giving them a chance to share a little bit more about what is really going on, so that I can better understand the situation. And one of the questions I absolutely want to ask at some point early is, well, what have you tried to fix that, and how did it work? Because
Okay.
the last thing I would
Great
want to
question.
do is recommend something that they've tried and it didn't
Yeah.
work, and then I'm kind of done.
Yeah. Yeah. They kind of put you in the box with everybody else.
Right.
So let's shift gears a little bit. What's the best advice that you've ever been given that hopefully you followed, and what did you learn?
Best advice I was ever given was to learn everything you can about people. And what I realized, what that did for me was I started really understand, like, personality styles and behavioral styles and emotional intelligence. Like, I really studied everything I could about other people. And one day I realized that the common person in every relationship is me. So I should probably look in the mirror and learn everything I can about myself.
Right.
And I think the best advice that I give people is, if you want to be more influential with other people, you have to understand what has influence over you.
Right.
And that, more than anything, especially in dealing with human beings, emotions are triggers. And if you layer good sales skills or leadership skills on top of a rocky foundation where you're not really aware of your emotional impact on other people, it's all of those skills kind of fall through the cracks.
Right.
But if you can strengthen that and then you layer learning on top of it, that's the key
Yeah.
to everything.
Well, it's so interesting that you say that. So I'm in the process of writing a book, and one of the things we've already determined is how important that chapter is on leadership. On You can't lead anybody else unless you understand yourself, and so
Exactly.
it makes obviously a lot of sense. So let's flip that upside down. What's the worst advice that you've ever been given that hopefully you didn't follow? However, if you did, what did you learn?
Worst advice I was ever given was when I was starting in my sales training, coaching, consulting career, and I had learned a particular methodology, and the rule was, don't get creative, just teach our system. And I took from that being systematic in your approach is a good thing. I still believe that some amount of system and process is strategically smart, but it diminished it, like, in one sentence, every creative, intuitive thing about how I interact with people. And it limited how I was able to contribute to their growth because I felt constricted by this system. So
Okay.
I think now what I've learned is it's good to have a structure to anchor your teaching or your process, but it's also good to really be present with people and be able to pull from other areas of expertise, because there's a reason that you're there. There's a reason that you are in that conversation in that moment with that individual or that company, and they need something, and it may be more than that structure provides, and they're
Sure.
relying on you to bring them what they need, and so it requires creativity.
Yeah, it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. So Merritt, you've been amazing. I'm going to do a little PSA here and then come back to you with a final thought that you would share with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, we so appreciate your support. Obviously, we do this because of the feedback that we get. So please go to www.thesuccessascent.com, your favorite podcast source. We're all over the place. Subscribe, give us a rating, feedback we love. You can give it to us anywhere you can find us. So we just so appreciate all that support. So Merritt, let's have a final thought. Take us away. What would you share with folks as a final impact?
Yeah, I think that the first thing that you always would want to do if you're on a path to improving any area of your business is to really take a good hard look at where you are right now. And it's one thing to look at the numbers, the client list, and all of those kinds of things, but it's a whole different ballgame to really do an analysis on what your beliefs are about what's possible.
Right.
How much is a lot of money and things like that. So we developed actually what we call a sales SWOT on steroids. And I'd be happy to share that with your audience. It's a tool that we actually charge for, but when you access it through this certain link, it's
Uh-oh.
complimentary. So yay,
I love it.
save $100.
There you
But
go.
go to meritkahn.com, MERITKAHN .com/podcast, and take the Swift Sales SWOT on quiz. That'll give you I actually look at all of the results that come in, and I do a little video analysis,
Wow.
personal and 100% custom. So no boilerplate
Wow.
forms. I know I won't always be able to do it like this, Pat, but we just launched this, so I'm excited to share it.
Very
But it
cool.
will really give you a good handle on what's the thing that you should be working on to get to that next level of growth
And
on your success ascent.
I love it. I love it. We're scrolling that right now. So thank you so much for sharing that with folks. And again, I think, the thing I took away today was obviously the 4 magic words. I just love that. And then the who chiseled that over the door. Those are my two big takeaways for today. So thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate your time, and I know how very valuable it is. And you just delivered at a high level today. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And as I end every show, ladies and gentlemen, be happy, be healthy, be safe until the next time we talk. Take care.